You know I'm right. The show that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, entertainment, and news. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. Joe's got the C on his shirt for his last name if you are watching on the video stream here today, which is really great. But Joe, very excited for our guest today. I know we always love it when we get a fellow Italian on with us.
Absolutely, a fellow Paisan with us. He's been a reporter for Major League Baseball for MLB.com since 2004. He's also a columnist, and he is also the writer for A Fan's Guide to Baseball Analytics. So that's something that we'll get into later with him. But we're really, really happy to have him on. Appreciate his time. Anthony Castrovince. Anthony, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, even though I'm ill-fitting for a podcast called You Know I'm Right, because I've never been right about anything. So I appreciate you having me regardless.
You always have those, you always do those great hot stove segments where you're predicting 3 years in the future. So one of these days it'll hit.
Yeah, blind squirrel finds a nut. I'll get occasionally I'll run into one. Yeah.
So we got to ask you off the top here, as an Italian, what do you think is the best eating holiday?
The best eating holiday is Thanksgiving, and I'm fine with the turkey and stuffing and fixings and whatnot. But I don't think there's anything wrong with a spaghetti and meatball feast. And my in-laws have learned to work in Italian food into Christmas or New Year's or whatever, like things where they never would have had Italian food before I came along. So I like to think they've wised up in my presence. So I've brought that to them, because you can have Italian food for anything and it works.
That's a fair point. Nick and I, we're kind of on the same page with this. We prefer Christmas Eve, and I'm a huge seafood guy. We love the seven fishes on Christmas Eve. So that's it for us. We do like Thanksgiving, but I'm not a huge turkey guy. I think a lot of people are huge turkey people anyway.
In our family, Christmas Eve is homemade sausage. We make the sausage a few weeks in advance, a couple 100 pounds of Italian sausage. Wow. And wrapped inside of I live in Cleveland. There's a place called Presti's Pizza in Little Italy that has it's great for wrapping around that homemade sausage. So that to me is what Christmas Eve tastes like and looks like.
So you are from Cleveland, and this is kind of debatable here, but who was the first person in the past 30 years to bring a championship home to Cleveland? Was it The Miz when he became WWE champion, or was it LeBron James?
No disrespect to The Miz, but I think we had a pretty big parade that LeBron was a focal point of, if I remember correctly. So I'll probably side with LeBron on that one.
All right. The Miz, of course, great in the celebrity baseball softball game, every All-Star game. So one of Cleveland's greatest exports at this point.
Well, also don't forget Hector Marinero, who the Cleveland Crunch back in the day. I think it was 1994. I can't even tell you. I can't even remember the name of the soccer league, but that was technically Cleveland's first team sports championship in a very long time. But kind of gets lost to history.
Yeah, and then Joe, of course, you're the big UFC guy, the world heavyweight champ.
Stipe Miocic.
That's right.
So a lot of great Clevelanders, and who knows, the exports, and we'll see what happens with Baker Mayfield, where he ends up. But getting to you here, Anthony, what made you want to pursue a career in sports journalism?
Well, first of all, lack of ability to play sports, yet passion and love for sports. It starts there. And I had a family friend who was a writer, not a sports writer, but just a writer in general, a newspaper writer. And I thought that was such a cool job. I always loved writing, just from a very young age. And even when I was playing Little League or had a baseball video game I was obsessed with and playing out a full season, I would write the game stories for every game I played, so I was kind of doing it before I even knew it was a job, just having that pure love of sport and love writing. And then as I got older and realized, you can actually do that for a living, it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, it seems like everybody we have on has that passion from a young age, high school newspaper, being involved in stuff like that. So you attended Ohio University. Mm-hmm. What was the process like to make that decision? Obviously, you stayed in state. And when you were there, What did you do on campus to stay active? Were you involved with any internships and stuff like that?
It wasn't even a decision to go there, to be honest. I didn't apply anywhere else. Both of my older brothers had gone there, and I didn't see any reason. I loved the place just from visiting them, and they had a great journalism program. So it was just kind of fell all into place for me. And so yeah, like I said, didn't apply anywhere. Was happy to get in there, and you know, pretty much right away started working for the school paper. Eventually, my sophomore junior, or no, excuse me, junior and senior year, I wrote for the local paper as a legit, their beat writer for Ohio University sports, which is great because it's a Division I school, but there wasn't it's not like it gets a ton of media coverage, so you kind of get to own the beat at that young age and formative stage. So that was a great experience. And then as far as internships, Scripps Howard News Service was functional back then, and we were a Scripps college, and so I got my foot in the door through that, and got worked for them in Washington D.C. for a summer, just kind of covering everything going on in D.C. Sports wise, which was really cool. And then I worked for the Cleveland Plain Dealer as an internship after college. So just a lot of great, just real life experiences that I learn more from all those than anything you learn in the classroom. I think that's true of a lot of people, and probably in a lot of fields. But particularly just getting covered Division I sports, football, basketball, and baseball for that local paper as a beat writer, and traveling and all that. I mean, those were great experiences.
That's a good segue with the Cleveland Plain Dealer stuff. I was going to ask that, because it seems like a lot of people who go to school in Ohio, there's the connection there to the
Right.
Cleveland and Cincinnati. So the hardest part in the industry is getting your first job, right? So you interned for the Cleveland Plain Dealer after you attended Ohio University. So what was the process like getting your first real journalism job after school?
I mean, honestly, I ran right into a wall, like right into a buzzsaw of just difficulty. And it really affects your ego at the time, because you think, oh, I'm pretty good, and I, like I said, I had all these great experiences, but you very quickly realize just how competitive this field is. And, at a time when things were I graduated in 2003. So things were starting to shift to more digital, and the newspaper business was kind of upended by that. And it was just a much different world than the world I had decided to venture into just a few years earlier, going into college. And it was really difficult. So after interning that summer, after I graduated college, I was just kind of scrambling and applying all over the place. Got a healthy batch of rejection letters, and I ended up taking a news writing job, just not, very close to home, just to kind of get my foot in the door somewhere. That was at the Sandusky Register. It was just funny because I had actively avoided being a news writer throughout college, and very hyper focused on sports. And it was to my benefit to actually take that job, because I learned the things I probably should have learned, when I was fully devoted to covering football, basketball, and baseball, covering city council and cops and courts and stuff like that. That was a great experience as well. And that was just a few months or so. And then MLB.com at that point did not have an internship program, but I pestered my way into kind of becoming the guinea pig there, and becoming the first intern. I just bothered them enough that they finally just hired me to shut me up. So I quit the full-time job at the newspaper to be where I wanted to be, which was covering sports, and specifically covering baseball. And I had freelanced for MLB.com, so I had my foot in the door that way. And I've been there pretty much ever since. I was an intern for a full baseball season, and then during the following off season, I worked for a newspaper while waiting and hoping I'd be on full time the following season, and that's exactly what happened. So I've been there ever since.
So you mentioned that this time, basically, everything was kind of changing. Everything was starting to slowly go more digital.
Yeah.
Your whole life, basically, and definitely in college, I'm sure you're being taught, or you're in a mindset of need to get into a paper here. So on your behalf, was there any hesitation about going to be a writer exclusively for digital? And if not, did you hear anything from any naysayers that were like, I don't know, Anthony, this internet thing might not last too long?
Yeah, I it's funny you say that, because I do distinctly remember I did get offered a job at a newspaper at a time when I was wrapping up the internship with MLB.com and trying to figure out what happens next, whether I would stay on there or go back to newspapers. And I was offered a pretty good newspaper job at that point, and I remember turning them down because I felt pretty good about my chances of remaining with MLB.com. And I remember the editor derisively saying, "Well, good luck with a .com," kind of rolling his eyes. You could hear it in his voice. And I didn't have much hesitation, I guess, just because I knew what the format was, having freelance there and then worked there for a full season. I knew the editors I was working with. I was working with good people who were passionate and smart and came from newspaper backgrounds. It wasn't some haphazard thing just slapped together. I think originally MLB.com, like team writers and that sort of thing, they're basically team employees that just, hey, we needed something on the website, so you threw it up there. And a lot of those, were ill-fitting matches. But at that point, when I got on board, it was really starting to be shaped into a legit journalistic enterprise, and I felt really good about it. I just felt like it was a really good place to to travel, to see the country, to try, interesting things. And there was nothing really off limits in that internship in terms of what I could try, features I could write. I was, how old was I? 23 years old and covering Major League Baseball on a daily basis, usually. And I think that happens more often now. When I graduated college, it was more common for people that age, people in my position, to start out covering, high school sports for a newspaper. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great experience. And I did a lot of that, but to be thrust into covering Major League Baseball was just an awesome opportunity. So it was hard to, be picky or, feel weird about it anyway, because it was so fun. It was just such a great, experience.
Absolutely. So over the last 10 years, how have you treaded the line when it comes to breaking news between, I got to tweet this out first, so I got the credit, versus let me put this up on MLB.com and then tweet out my article?
Yeah, when I was covering a beat, that was and as Twitter, social media in general, just kind of exploded. That was always delicate, and I think it's important to know where your bread is buttered first and foremost. Twitter has maybe someday, but Twitter has yet to send me a paycheck. It would be nice, but and so there is that. You have to think of the first job is to inform your readers, and you also have to remember that Twitter is such a small space of our readership, really. But that's not to say it's not important, because it is. There is a large audience there, so it is a balance. But I think there are ways to tease the fuller story at your outlet while still giving the news. I think you see that a lot. But I mean, at the end of the day, Twitter is always going to be first, whether it's you or someone else, and scoops only last seconds anymore. So, there's no avoiding that. But I think where we can really shine at our outlet, and this goes for any outlet, is to provide the full context. It's one thing to tweet out the base news, and it's another thing to have the context that goes with it. And to me, that's where the real race is not so much the race to be the first to report something, but the race to be the best to report it, to give the fullest picture of the news.
Absolutely. So 12, 13 years ago, MLB Network launches. Naturally, a lot of your colleagues and you end up getting on various shows as guest appearances. So for you, especially coming from strictly journalism, that's what you did in college, what was the learning curve for you like, and how comfortable have you become over the years when you come on to do your segments?
Yeah, I got really lucky there, because I was really I don't know, like tunnel vision slash close-minded when I was in college, and I was early in my professional career, in that I am a writer, and that's what I am, and I am not a multimedia whatever. That's just not what I'm trained for. That's not what I'm interested in, etc. As I've grown older and just gotten more comfortable just with my industry knowledge, just as a function of being around long enough to remember stuff and to have context and to know stuff, you just get more comfortable in your own skin. And so and when I say I got lucky, what I mean is, early in my MLB.com career, there weren't, we had like MLB.com radio that I don't think anyone listened to. And we would have occasional video things that no one watched. So I was able to like kind of learn while doing those in front of a very small audience, and would probably cringe if I saw or heard any of that today. And some other local TV stuff and whatnot, and just terrible, like Ron Burgundy, where do I put my hands kind of thing. But you learn from all of that. And then meanwhile, this, as you said, this major opportunity and broadcast opportunity comes along in the form of MLB Network. And the first few years it existed, MLB.com and MLB Network kind of existed separately. We were kind of separate worlds, which again was probably to my benefit because I wasn't really ready for all that yet. But by the time they did come calling, I was more prepared. I was more ready. I was more experienced, and worked out pretty well. I love going on there now. I love the people who run the ship there. I love the on-air talent is just great to work with, and it's another place where they are not afraid to have fun, and they're not afraid to try things. I throw silly segment ideas at them, and they, let's try it. Why not? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I've gotten to do some features for them as well. It's been a really fun kind of bonus, to what I do with MLB.com.
Yeah, I think most people in your position have reservations about being on TV and doing stuff like that at first. But
Yeah.
I think the nature of the industry and the business has changed so much.
Yes.
Because I know when I went to college, and I know when Nick went to college, we got our communications degrees. We were basically taught a very well rounded curriculum for the business and stuff like that. So it's like now you take classes to be on camera, to learn how to do that, to learn how to read off prompters and stuff like that,
Right.
how to report out in the field and do the broadcast journalism. And Nick is very, very good at doing that. So kudos. You're very welcome.
When I was at Ohio U, it was like the journalism school was actually divided into different categories. There was news writing and editing, which I was in. There was magazine writing. There was broadcast. There was public relations, and there might have been one other, I can't remember. Design, I think. Yeah, design. And what I've learned is that I should have been in all five, and it was impossible. I would have been there for like 8 years or something to do all the classes you have to do to be in all five. But I mean, that should have been the curriculum. And now if you were doing a journalism curriculum, you would include all those things, because you need to learn about all. Even if you don't do public relations, it's important to learn about public relations. Even if you don't do magazine writing, it's good to know the particulars of that industry or what have you. So because now my job has involved a lot of that stuff that was totally separate from what I was doing at college.
Wow, magazines, huh? Remember those?
Yeah, another one. I'm pulling out all these ancient terms.
So you've been there for a really, really long time. I want to ask about favorite and least favorite events that you've covered. Now, I'm talking big scope here. So we're talking about games in particular, maybe press conferences and interviews and stuff like that. Maybe there were events, after the game or post game where you kind of ran into a certain player or certain managers or certain front office people. But what were your favorite and least favorite events off the top of your head? Because I know it's very hard to narrow it down and choose one or particular ones.
I'm very fortunate in my role now where I kind of get the greatest hits of baseball, where so like spring training comes along, and I'll spend a little bit of time in each state, maybe like a week or so in each state, and bounce around and see different teams and that sort of thing. Jewel events, the All-Star game, the World Series, postseason in general, one-off events like the Little League Classic, things like that. Random, I think of like a trip to the Field of Dreams in Iowa and stuff like that. So that I'm seeing the best of the best, and then, on the flip side of that is when you go to spring training for 8 weeks. That's a different thing than going for a couple of weeks and bouncing around. When you go to spring training and you're covering a team for 8 weeks, that's a different thing. So when you're spending, 8 weeks in Winter Haven, Florida, that can wear on you a little bit after a while. So that's kind of the difference. And I was in my 20s when I was covering a team, so it wasn't as bad as it would be today, like to leave a family behind, and things of that nature. But so that's the yin and yang of that. But I can't say I've had too many bad experiences, to be honest. I mean, baseball writing is a real grind, and particularly when you do cover a team for 162 games and you cover the full spring training, and then that team happens to go on a long postseason run. I mean, you think about that. That's most of your year right there, and you're on the road for roughly half of it. That can wear a person down if you do it over time, and if you have a family and all those things I said, or commitments back home. So I've always said that if you can cover baseball, you can cover anything, just because it is every day. And I mean anything, like you can cover the White House or what have you, because it does teach you so much about just grinding it out. And you learn so much about the country. You learn so much about traveling. You learn so much about human beings. You interact with people from all different cultures, all different backgrounds. You see a team come together and it changes so much. The complexion of a team, even a good team, changes so much over the course of the year. And there's just so much to keep track of: whose knee hurts, whose elbow's barking, everything. It's just so much. And it's just nonstop. And it's all day and all night, because news can happen at any time, even when they're not playing a game, So I love that about it. I think it's a really great training ground for anybody in journalism, to be honest with you.
What is the coldest you've ever been in a game? Because I'm just picturing that first Tuesday night game of the year, Indians at home. It's 18
The
degrees
Guardians.
outside.
They're the Guardians now.
The Guardians now. Anthony was covering the Indians when he was a beat reporter. So that's why I'm saying it that way.
So when I was young, I would tough it out, and the lower you are in the pecking, like you go cover a postseason series, for instance, and you are the backup beat writer, basically, or whatever. You're like fifth or sixth on our organizational depth chart at that particular game. And that means you are probably going to be sitting in the auxiliary box as opposed to the press box, the nice, cozy, heated press box in mid to late October. You're probably going to be out in the right field stands in the auxiliary box, freezing your butt off. Yeah, I mean, I don't know which one in particular it would be, but I know there were some playoff games where it was just brutal. But it's also cool. You're kind of you're amongst the crowd, and you feed off that energy a little bit. But I've gotten too old for all of that just in general. So if I don't have a press box seat, I'll go to the workroom. There's many events where it's so lousy and you're in some kind of workroom watching the game you're at on TV because you're off in the back somewhere, and occasionally sneaking out to get a feel for the atmosphere. But that's just nature of it. It's funny. I mean, baseball just puts you through all conditions, as you know. There's also been events I've been at where you're locked in, you're sitting in an auxiliary box or front row of the press box, you're locked into whatever you're working on, and you look up a couple hours later and realize you've become totally scorched, where the sun was beating on you without even realizing it. So that happens too.
No doubt about that. Now, what's interesting, it's obviously very different for you. You're not covering a team. You're doing more column, more fun type of stuff. For you, when you're looking to write a story, is there any particular player or coach that you always like to reach out to first, and that they can kind of point you in the right direction with how you form that story?
Well, being based in Cleveland, and this isn't always the case, but being based in Cleveland, that's always been my home base in terms of people to turn to first for certain things, or sometimes that's the genesis of ideas. I mean, they're just the people I see the most. I go to the ballpark, and those are the people I see the most. So we talk baseball, and sometimes you get ideas from that, or sometimes you're bouncing ideas off them. So that's always, and that I'm talking about the front office, the coaching staff, and you build a relationship with the players over the years as well. So that's kind of, ground zero for me personally. And I'm sure that's the same, people based in New York, it's going to be the same with the Yankees and Mets. And I don't live in the baseball capital of the universe. I think that's pretty clear, but that's in some ways a benefit to me, where the access is so much easier here than it would be if I were based in New York. There's benefits to being in a New York or a Los Angeles, and there's benefits to being a place like this. But here, I don't have that competition for a person's time, that I would have there. It's no big deal for me to get 15, 20 minutes with the pitching coach before a game, whereas that's probably not going to happen, in New York City. So I like that about it. And I'm fairly close to other markets as well. Detroit's not far away, Pittsburgh's not far away. And so it's good for relationship building that way.
Now, you said you're horrible predicting the future. I'm going to predict your future a bit here.
All right.
In 2023, 24, and 25, the London series is going to be back. I think you'll be at least one of those. That's going to be my prediction.
You know what? It's funny. It's so funny you say that, because just the other day, you may have seen, the mayor of London was at MLB headquarters, and I mentioned to my editor, I said, I think we need an official European baseball savant, writer on our site, the go-to person for all things Europe. And I think that person should be me.
Yep.
Wow.
And if I have to travel over to London or Paris every so often just to get a feel for the preparation, or what people are saying about baseball, hey, I'm willing to do that. I'm just that much of a team player.
The European baseball ambassador.
That's right.
Yeah,
I
like that.
It's perfect. All right. I mean, let's hope we get the World Baseball Classic to come back, and
now that I can't. That's John Paul Morosi's thing.
I know, but I don't know. I think you got to interview Mike Piazza, like had the Team Italy coach. I think you guys would hit it off. But we're talking about the ballpark here. When you're covering games, obviously it's different now. You're not just specifically covering a team, but what was your routine as to when you would get there? And more importantly, I want to know, like, what's your pregame meal? Obviously, you could be there for 7-8 hours, so you gotta be locked in there. And then are you snacking during the game? Are you staying hydrated? Sometimes some of these stadiums, they don't have a bathroom in the press box, and if they do, there's just one stall, so maybe you can't really run. We always ask our broadcasters this question as well. So what's your kind of your day routine at a ballpark?
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. Well, I mean, as you guys probably know, we get there pretty early for baseball. The clubhouse is open. The home clubhouse is usually open like 4 hours before the first pitch. So you get there before that and set up and think about what you're doing that day. And then you have the clubhouse access and the manager access. And, I like to hang around for BP because that's usually a good time to interact with people on the periphery, so to speak. And it's amazing. It goes fast. Pregame actually goes faster than you would think, because particularly in my role where I usually have a reason to be on both sides of the field, the home team and the visiting team. And so you go from home access first and then visiting team access. And the next thing you know, it's an hour till first pitch. Certainly use that hour if you're writing something pregame to bang that out. Or as you said, to get something to eat. I've in my as I've advanced in my career, I'm much less prone to eating the press box dining food and more likely to just venture off campus and bring it back.
Like really leaving the stadium or walking the concourse?
Oh yeah, leaving the stadium. Now, when I was on a beat, I never did that because when I was on a beat, I was blogging, I was writing a notebook. I was probably writing like 3,000, 4,000 words before every first pitch. So I was insane and just writing way too much and then cramming in a press box dining like during first pitch. But now in my older
what stadium has the best surrounding eateries outside of it?
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, Boston's great. There's a lot of good stuff around Fenway. Although Fenway's press dining is really not that bad. Wrigley is you definitely want to go off campus at Wrigley anyway. So they've got some good options. There's a lot, but so yeah, and then you got to have a plan. You got to know your body, just like an athlete. You must know your body and when you get hungry and how much to eat and how much not to eat. You want to overeat, but you don't want to undereat. You want to have a plan for if this game really, we're still in the pre-pitch clock era of baseball. So if this game really drags, what's my strategy? Do I have a Cliff Bar in the bag? If I don't, I better have some crackers from the press dining, from the soup area, just to be prepared, just in case. Is there an ice cream option at this ballpark? Do they have a machine, a soft serve machine? Do they have the ice cream sandwiches in the freezer? What are we working with here? You got to know the terrain. That's very important.
So between these two stadiums, if you're going to Seattle or you're going to Colorado, are you more likely to have the Rocky Mountain oysters or the fried grasshopper?
You know what? And, contrary to Joe, I do not like seafood. So I have to say, I guess the grasshopper on principle. I think you deep fry anything, you can make it work. You deep fry it and you dip it in some sort of condiment and you probably want to know the difference. So I'd probably go with the grasshopper, actually.
That's interesting. An Italian who doesn't like seafood. Unbelievable. It's all right. So we're going to move on to your book now, Fan's Guide to Baseball Analytics. And if you're anything like my cousins or my friends, you're sick of the analytics debates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody kind of rolls their eyes now when baseball analytics come up in conversation. But I'm going to ask you about the process of writing the book itself.
Yeah.
So primary differences between writing an article and a column as opposed to writing a more long form book like you did. And what was the moment where you said to yourself, man, I always wanted to write a book. I didn't know what the topic of the book was. When did you settle on basically fleshing out and giving a detailed analysis of the current baseball analytical structure that we see in the game today right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, the analytics debate, as you said, old school versus new school, whatever, I mean, that war is won. Analytics won, whether, you like it or I like it or not, it's been won. And so that's kind of where the book comes from, is this idea of for people like you and me who aren't mathematically inclined, I mean, you better learn it if you're going to understand what the heck people are talking about on the broadcast, because it's only going to get more invasive on the scoreboard, on the broadcast. And it does, I think it really does heighten your enjoyment of the game when you understand the game's language. I think that's always been the case, but now the language has changed, and these stats are the language of baseball. And that's just the nature of the progression of the sport. So this book is written to help those of us who aren't mathematically inclined, the non-nerds, to grasp the nerdy numbers. How I settled on that was someone approached me from this publisher about writing a book about a different topic entirely, and but during that conversation, we started talking about stats, and the gist of it was that, we all know what a 300 hitter is. Like, we know what that means historically when you say a guy's a 300 hitter, but people don't know what a 100 OPS plus hitter is. So how do we equate the modern numbers to the old numbers, and that, like, how do we, what is a good WAR? What is a bad WAR? What is a good WOBA? What is a bad WOBA? Things like that. The editor thought that would be really helpful. So, and when he said that, kind of light bulb went off, because I thought about it, and I had been writing this book all along without realizing it, because I had been learning these analytics through the progression of my career and incorporating them into my work, explaining them within my work, occasionally writing articles that were entirely about stats and explaining those stats. And then it was all kind of right there in front of me. It was just a matter of putting all the pieces together and having it all in one place. And it was really kind of fun and easy to write, to be honest. That's the point, though, is it's supposed to be fun and easy to read, so that it's not like intimidating or boring or anything like that. So just each stat is its own chapter, like little essays about each stat, basically, and just do them, piecemeal like that. And at the end of the day, you had kind of a glossary, and it kind of functions in order, in sequence, where you kind of build up this knowledge as you go. And as you learn one thing, it helps you learn the next thing, and just kind of stair stepping it that way.
Very fascinating. And I would suggest that anybody who wants to work in baseball in a college, Yale or Princeton, check out the book, because it'd be very helpful going, because that's the path now. You go to Ivy League school, end up in the front office, and work your way up.
Yeah.
The Mets assistant general manager, Zosmer, I mean, he gets in there. This guy he's using analytics to predict Oscar winners analytically, and he nailed all of his picks. So it's just tremendous what the analytics can do for you these days. Anthony, last question for me here. You maybe touched on your answer a little bit earlier, but we want to ask you, what was your I'm right moment in your life, your career? So what we mean by that is a time where you wanted to pursue something, you ask somebody for advice, they said, Anthony, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't do this. I don't think that's going to work out for you. And you say, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately you will see why it is that I'm right.
Oh, wow. Oh boy, that's fascinating. What a great question. My biggest like X factor moment in my life was when I was, starting to want to come off the baseball beat and to do something else with my life because of the aforementioned grind. And just, I was getting married, and I didn't want that life for me or my wife anymore, where I'm just gone
Yeah.
all the time. And so I didn't know really what to do next. And it seemed like one natural step was actually NFL coverage. I had an opportunity to cover the NFL because that is, you got the travel, but it's, 8 games a year. It's just a very different thing. And so I had this opportunity. I actually briefly accepted it, and kind of accepted it despite some advice from my wife and others that, hey, there's something to be said for staying at one place where you're valued. That was MLB.com, and they were trying to work with me on to have a better life work balance and a different role. And so it was funny because I took the other job on a Friday, instantly felt weird about it, and spent all weekend kind of stewing about it, and then changed my mind come Monday, and have been with MLB.com, that continued since. But had I just listened to some good voices, and maybe ignored some bad voices, including my own, I probably would have gotten that one right from the beginning. So I don't know if that answers your question the way you asked it, but that's what I thought of when you asked that.
You were almost the Paul DePodesta of Beat Writers.
That's right. I was Paul DePodesta before Paul DePodesta. He's made it work longer in the NFL than I did. I lasted 2 days. He's lasted a little bit longer than that. But I think we all have those moments where your life kind of reaches that fork in the road, and as Yogi Berra said, you take it. You take one of them, and the sliding doors thing where your life changes one way or another. And it's just fascinating to think back in those moments, and hopefully it works out for you. And then you look back and go, well, what was I so stressed about? What was I so distressed about, making this difficult decision when the right answer was there all along?
This is true. Anthony, thank you again for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. Last question from me. I'm so happy Nick stumbled about this before. How often do you still confuse the Guardians and the Indians? The truth.
It's still happening. More in casual conversation for me, because I'm just so used to saying, I was at the Tribe game, or
Right.
the Indians, and sometimes I'm referencing them in the past anyway, so it's actually accurate.
Like
Right.
me, I was accurate, Joe.
He was.
You
Technically, you weren't wrong.
It just takes time, and you hear it with the broadcast. Even they're still whiffing on that one every once in a while too. It's just, and it's not even about not supporting the change, because I was 100% supportive of the change. Guardians wasn't my first pick of new names, but I was supportive of the change in general. It's just reflexive, and it's in our history, and it's and in me in particular. I mean, that ball club's been a huge part of my life. I met my wife through that team. I covered that team. I'm around that team all the time. I watched it as a kid and all that. So to just suddenly flip the switch to Guardians is a very difficult thing. But as I've said throughout this whole thing, give it 5 to 7 years, and we'll barely remember the old name. That's just the nature of life, and things go on.
Remember the disabled list?
That's right.
The injured list rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it does. It
does roll. It really does. So the Guardians name, a lot of people were very confused about that at first, but it does have a strong tie to Cleveland. So you could also answer that briefly before we let you go.
Yeah. Not many people realized. I think many Clevelanders didn't realize that there are these statues right outside the ballpark, and it is almost as if they are guarding the ballpark in a sense. The guardians of traffic. A really cool, the Hope Memorial Bridge, which runs in downtown Cleveland, connects like the downtown area to Ohio City, and there's just these cool Art Deco statues on there overseeing traffic, and it was kind of natural for them to pull that in, and that's why they're the Guardians. So even though I did fight for Spiders, and I fought hard for them to reclaim the Cleveland Spiders name, I totally understood, especially that it's basically the same word as Indians.
Right.
So, and you could change the uniform and it barely looks any different. I guess that helps too. But so yeah, that's where they got it. It's not like they're we're watching Guardians of the Galaxy and got inspired. Something legitimately in Cleveland. And to be honest, I mean, when they went through that process, you look around, and I love my hometown, and there's a lot of great things about it. But we don't have a lot to work with when it comes to sports team nicknames. So I was glad they were able to ultimately pull something that does have something to do with the city.
Yeah, I think Spiders was the sentimental favorite, but after I found out the whole Guardians connection, I was, it kind of made sense. So I'm probably public enemy number one for you because I went to the Yankees Guardians series over at the stadium a couple of weeks ago where I went to all 3 games and they
Yeah.
swept them.
Yeah, they did.
So you don't want me going to any Cleveland Guardians games in the future. But Anthony, once again, thank you for doing this with us. We really, really appreciate it. And what we do here before we let everybody go is we give everybody the last word. So if there's anything else you would like to share, if there's anything else you would like to promote, or if there's anything else coming up in the future, kind of like that whole London piece of news that you gave us, please, by all means, go ahead. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate you doing this with us. Hopefully you can come on again real soon. And thanks again. Hopefully you have a good week.
Yeah, likewise, guys. Yeah, nothing specific to promote. I would just say thanks for listening. And, anybody can reach out to me if they are looking to get in this business and just need advice or what have you. Not that I have great advice to offer, but, I would just say, as my man, Bruce Springsteen says, just stay hard, stay hungry, stay alive, and you'll make it through.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Anthony. That's going to do it here for this episode. You know I'm right. For our very special guest, Anthony Castrovince, my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.